Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this live event with Victor Allen. Victor's a great friend of the school who spoke to parents at the beginning of this academic year, and here on the very last night of term, he's going to be presenting to us again, talking about building emotionally resilient, intelligent young people from tots to teens. So Victor, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully now my screen has become live and I'm going to be looking forward over the next 45 minutes to take you through, as it says there, tots to teen. It's going to be a whirlwind experience for you all to actually see that not only the way that the children that we look after and love dearly grow from that bundle that we cuddle up until the teenagers that we perhaps wave off into university, into the future. And we're going to see the psychological, emotional, social kind of journey that they're all going to be on. So I'm going to be blocking the work and the program through over a certain few sections, and these different sections I'm looking to see how the slide moves forward. At the moment, I'm not able to move anything forward. Have we got a different screen now? People can see the next slide. Perfect. We're with me now. So what I'll be looking at is 0 to 5, those first 5 years that we're actually having. Then with the next block, we'll be looking at from 6 to 10. The way with all from 11 to 15, I'm going to be looking at combining those areas, because those areas are key for the social and emotional development of the children as they go through their adolescent years, early adolescence from 8 probably through till about 14, and then from then onwards we'll look at some of the issues that perhaps teenagers are going through before they move on to the adult life. So jumping straight in, 0 to 5, this to my mind is the most treasured years that we actually have with the children. Ever since that beautiful eye contact from the youngsters, we've gone through the birth, we've gone through holding them, we've gone through those sleepless nights. And have you noticed that the sleepless nights, when you become so haggard, when you become so tired, when you're beginning to think, is this child ever going to sleep through the evening? That roughly around about 4, 5, 6 months, they will then start learning to smile at your face. And then you begin to realize, I can perhaps have sleep because this child is so adorable. And after they've learned to smile at you and they get that lovely contact, they're listening to what you're saying, they're building those links with you. And we look for those first steps to be taken. And then when they're off, they're off. You don't quite know where they're going to go, but their brain is now telling them, I've mastered walking and I need to explore. And they've learned that secret again, that no matter what they get themselves into, a smile usually wins you through. They will learn through these 0 to 5 years to find out about their own identity. They'll learn that they're not only just themselves requiring you to look after them, they will suddenly begin to realize that they can start looking after themselves a little bit. They're a bit more of an entity. And this is also the key period where if we're looking to build young, resilient, competent, capable children, what we are doing and establishing how they cope with stress during this period, you will see it formulating. Do you remember the times when you're looking at a youngster and they fall over and they don't quite know what to do? So they look at you to think, should I cry now? Should I do anything? Because they're looking to see what a response is. And if we do too much, worry too much, that will cause a little bit of worry for them. So if we say, come on now, up your set, it helps them build that little bit of, I am all right when I have a little worry or a little hiccup. And these small but sure steps of how they begin to cope with those initial areas of stress will help build them up over the years so that they can cope with the bigger things. So we've got that area. You will see so much energy that they're having, which is going to be key. You will also notice they give you great years of fun. And this 0 to 5 is those magic years, because during this period, they are also listening and watching and figuring out for you as well. I like this period. One little thing that I've done with my grandchildren at this moment is introduce them to things like the magic tree. When you take them out on walks, when you experience a bit of the countryside, when you do things, just the magic tree is a few little treats in your pockets. Just tap the tree saying, magic tree, have you got a treat for me? You throw up the treats and they fall down on their head and they look a delight. And it's those little things that you're trying to give them lovely little memories of when they want to go out walking, when they want to be with you. It's a treasure. So at this moment in time, there are certain things that we can do. I really would say, start that process of reading to your children. The reading not only helps them get used to your words, what you're saying to them, but it also gets them used to listening to the tones that you give. And as they get more used to looking at the pictures, you can actually say, oh, this person looks sad, this person looks happy, this person looks a bit concerned about something. Perhaps we can find it. And that talking and that reading to them helps build those connections. We are a social species. Therefore, we need that social interaction that is going on. Talking to them and making sure that not only talking to them, we engage with them and we also listen to them. And remember, to listen to somebody, that does mean they need to feel valued. They need to feel appreciated. They need to feel respected, as in you're wanting to actively be engaged to them. They want to be understood by you. And even though they'll start from the first blah, 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 they might not, but they're still communicating. And what we're trying to do is build up that communication until they're comfortable to share everything with you. So you talk, you listen, you engage, you also play. I cannot stress enough how much unstructured play, imaginative play is key, especially to these early years. And we don't need massive pieces of play. And one of the things that often disappoints me is toys can be so much designed to do something and that one thing only. Whereas, and I think we all know the magic of Lego. We all know the magic of a cardboard box. And we've seen how we use those simple things to create and build things and help that child build that concept of imagination, of play, trial and error. Those again are key things that we can actually move through. And do not forget to cuddle. The cuddling, the close contact, the holding on to, even holding hands reduces blood pressure, helps you have a connection with the person. Cuddling, holding on to them makes them feel secure. Now, if you look at those things in front of you do not require money or resources or anything else. They are us as a human being given to a young human being. But they have such an effect upon those younger human beings that they begin to feel a lot more comfortable and safe and secure. So those first 5 years are key. And now to look at how those foundational, there are certain aspects that are happening. Now you're going to have to bear with me, because even though I might talk about those lovely soft skills, we've got to understand that the brain is developing. You will see that physical development of that baby, but also what's going on in their head. And even if you put your hand on your head now, you'll feel how warm it is, because your brain is having to do so much. And the little baby's head, with their brain doing so much, it is not only learning how to manage everything around it, not only learning how to actually cope with it, but it started that process of development. And from the age of 2.5, 3 onwards, what's known as that limbic system is going to be kicking in. And that limbic system holds the key for how socially and emotionally they will develop. Language is part of all of these things, because we're going to have that communication skills, and the reading will help improve that language. But if you've got people who are bilingual in your house, now is the time to start developing the language. Start talking with the difference, and the baby and the young person will be far easier to pick up those skills. They will also be able to start communicating and getting used to their emotions through their imagination. They will also, I am sure you will be reminded, let you see their emotions in a violent way, in a troublesome way, and in a tantrumy way. But these are usually another form of communication, as I like to think about it. And sometimes it can be very embarrassing to us because we're thinking, I'm meant to do something and controlling this child. But this is really that child's needing to learn that whatever's going on, it's something that they're needing to respond to, and they'll need your calmness to help them respond. There's a beautiful part of our brain that gets agitated by other things around us that causes us to mirror what we're seeing. So if somebody's shouting and screaming, that usually causes us to get a little bit anxious as well. But what I would definitely want to actually see and encourage you to be doing is to think, okay, I can hear where you are. This is what's going to happen, talking in a calm way, and say, this needs to either stop, we need to go somewhere because we're going to be doing this. And what we're needing to see is for them to gradually start to learn to control that emotional experience. But as all of these emotions are going to be very raw to them, their ability to control them is looking towards you to help them, but they're going to be learning to control. And there is other processes that we can learn, and this is using all those senses. That during the time that you're doing it, your sight, which is you could be saying about, oh, look at this over there, look at that, looking at the book, the touch, how they explore and feel and think about things. Movement is going to be key as they start moving around the house and the home and the garden. They're also going to be working out their posture, how they sit, how they actually hold themselves, how they conduct themselves, how they even get learning to catch a ball. Their hearing is going to be experience different things for them. Help them also to learn about the differences that are out there as smell and taste, and all of these beautiful senses could be start introducing during these first 5 years. I do want to make a comment about screen time. As I mentioned, we as a social species need social interaction. They are learning and having better connections by the more social connections they can have with us. Better brain connections come from connections with us. Quality time with children is repetitive quality times of the things that I've mentioned to you. The more we do them over and over, the better it is. If for some extraordinary reason we do need to make sure that we give them some screen time and we're using it rather than a book, I would highly recommend for under 2s not at all. If for 2 onwards, I'm looking at a maximum of perhaps an hour a day, perhaps going on to 2 hours if need be later on, because they are an easy thing for us, but we're not used to them as human beings to learn the necessary skills that we're going to thrive as an adult. And I know, and this is one of the things, we're great at inventing things and giving them to people, but then we're not very good at understanding the effect that new invention has on us. But slowly but surely we're beginning to understand it does have somewhat of a not as good of an effect as we want as some of the things that we've had in the past. So screen time, as I say, moving on, getting rid of it. Movement is key. The more exercise that you hasten maturity, the more you're moving about. And the final thing I would definitely say is get them used to food. And I often hear they say, well, my baby or my youngster used to eat stuff, but he's now stopped eating it. He doesn't like eating it. And folks who study like the evolution of the human being, they might put this down to, even though they've tried different things, as we get more used to moving around, we get more kind of settled down to food that we know we're definitely safe in. Because if you can go back 200,000 years, if you've got a toddler walking around, could be eating anything, they've got to be a mechanism that says, no, I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to restrict it until I can sensibly know this is fine. So don't worry too much about them saying, well, they used to like that, but they don't. But do get used to not just saying, well, okay, what do you eat? But giving them the choice and saying, is it this or this? But that's it. And they can get used to it. I've never heard personally of any child choosing to starve in that respect, but they will be a little bit cantankerous sometimes when it comes down to it. And remember also, at this period, they are watching you. They're not only watching you, they're listening to you. And they're listening to what you talk about, what you say, how you say things, because you're their example. And I again can think of times when I've been in folks' houses when I'm needing to talk to the parents, and they might talk about the youngster, or they might talk about family events or adult events in earshot of children. And it's really we need to understand. It's not a sense of, well, they don't understand or whatever. Do your best to not include them in adult conversations or adult things at this period, because their little minds are not ready for it. We keep adult things for adults and children things for children, especially at this period in time, because remember that watching you is key. They're marking out a lot of what's going on. So in this brief overview of 0 to 5, it's the treasured time, it's the magic time, it's the lovely time. And that limbic system is coming on because they're creating memories that are going to start placing for years to come. And we're needing to introduce them slowly but surely into who they are, and what they like, because things are going to be changing. They're moving more towards not being a part of you, more towards discovering who they are for themselves. So moving from this period, that change is now coming. As I mentioned to you earlier, from 6 to 10, they're now changing from those little ones who perhaps will actually start asking questions about Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and all the rest of it, because they're beginning to suspect certain things about the magic tree that aren't quite as magic as it was in the past. They're beginning to assume their own view of the world and interpreting it from their own ideas and experiences. And it's still important to keep all of those things in mind. They are still children, even though their conversation may change. And as they grow older through those periods, from 6 to 7, start thinking about jobs in the house they can do. Start getting them to become part of the infrastructure of what's going on. Give them pieces of responsibility to see they are part of the community within this household. From 7 to 8, we're really still needing to get that physical activity. As I said to you, the more physical activity they can be engaged in, the quicker they mature as young people as well. So between that period, make sure that activity, they will listen to what's being said, and the 7 to 8, they will begin to tell you that's not fair, that is fair, you said this, you didn't say it. Everything is very black and white during this period. Again, when you speak to them, figure out how you can work with them to understand the interpretation of what you are saying and what you aren't saying, because of their interpretation may be quicker than you would think. Friendship, especially for girls, becomes very important at this time, especially of their own sex is what they're after. Girls get very much, I like my girlfriends, these are important, these are my best friends. You'll hear that terminology time and going, will you be my best friend? They start to actually see her, because they're making choices about who they like, who they don't like. Do I like her? Do I not like her? And we can actually talk to them and see how they can start understanding when they fall out with friends. Because to become socially and emotionally mature and resilient, we're needing to know who we can rely on and how we can make lasting relationships. And I love this slide, and I chose to put it on there because the best description about what I was trying to get across, because of these changes that are coming in, because of the conversations you might be having with your youngsters, you will begin to see that wonderful person who you enjoyed up until the age of 5, between 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 is going to turn into somebody else. And there are certain aspects of it. And the difference of why I've got the cat and the dog there is because I once heard somebody say, you know, when you go home and the dog is always pleased to see you, and it will always listen to you and always respond to you, and you can train really well. Whereas you may well have a cat in the house, but you don't always have that same interaction. The cat will begin to choose when to be with you. The cat will perhaps be in and out more often. And that That is really what you're now seeing. Your pet animal that always came to be with you will now become slightly more estranged from you. And because they're estranged, because they want to be with their friends, because that is important for them, talk to them about their friends, chat to them about what is a good friend, help them find strategies for in their lives to how to actually cope, because it's important this stage is in preparing them for the later stage. And I try and teach about a base that's there for everybody, and these are the basic psychological and social requirements we need to grow to become rounded human beings. And the base stands for, first and foremost, a sense of belonging, and we've done that through those ways of cuddling with them, listening to them, actually reading to them, of actually engaging with them. Those areas have helped us hold that sense of belonging. But after that sense of belonging comes autonomy. We need to start having a sense of autonomy that we can make decisions for ourselves. And that autonomy has to come with experience about how we make the right choices. And the S and the E stand for social and emotional competence. I need to feel good about myself because of the things that I can do in this social world. So establishing that base now becomes key for what you're needing to move them onto. And whenever I talk to people and discuss with them about their leadership experience, what they want to do, how they want to manage people, work with people, what their experiences are for their later life, a lot of these things are now getting the foundational because of what's going on now. So that base, that belonging, a bit of autonomy, looking for them to socially and emotionally become competent is the stage you're moving on to. Because this is the bit about the brain I want you to kind of get a grip of, this limbic system. This limbic system is made up of 3 key areas, and the first one is the hippocampus. Now this is growing, remember I said from 3 onwards, this stores our memories. And we're needing those memories to be ones that we can rely on and we can actually build on throughout our life. And as it stores those memories, it especially stores emotional ones. And those emotional ones and any kind of memories we have, if I see something happening or hear something happening or experience something happening again, it will immediately send a message to my amygdala. Now that amygdala in my head is responsible for every single emotional response that I'm going to be doing. And because of that, we therefore have to be aware that if I see something, it will remind me and I can feel love again. I see something, I might hear something, it reminds me and I might feel fear again. And I might see something or hear something or experience something, and because it remembers a trigger, it will go to the amygdala and cause me to get angry. And these areas, that amygdala has been there from birth. The hippocampus, who is beginning to be understandable about these emotions, the love, the fear, the anger, and the multitude of other emotions, they've been developing from the age of 3 onwards. They're watching what you do, listening to what you do, experiencing what you do, experiencing what the friends are saying, the interaction with other folks. And all the time I'm thinking, how does this affect me? How do I feel? How am I coping? And we remember, if we now as adults are beginning to think about certain things that are happening to us, they will be able to trigger memories about when we were youngsters, and it may well cause another response. So the hippocampus has been going from 3. It also then moves towards the idea of a prefrontal cortex. Now, so we got the hippocampus logging a memory. It goes to the amygdala, which causes a response. Now, the part of the brain that's meant to regulate that is the prefrontal cortex. Well, you will notice that this emotional regulation, that doesn't start kicking in until a few years later. So they've relied on us to help doing this. They rely on us to help figure out the consequences. But slowly but surely, over this period between 6 and 10, they are going to learn to do it themselves. But if we think about that, they've got the memories, they've got the emotions, but only now are they beginning to learn, how am I going to manage them? And because of all of that, we have to recognize this now period, they're going to be learning from us how to manage them. They're going to be learning from us how they can figure out the way of working their relationships out and the uncertainties. And I love this slide, and those who have seen me earlier will have actually remembered I brought this in. But this is the point you can see from the age of 3 onwards, that limbic system, which contains all of those processes, has been going. It goes and develops all the way through. So by the time we can say that a child's got to 15, that subcortex, which has been managing from the age of 8, has started to mature through. But that limbic system, those emotions are ripped raw. And they're very concrete, they're very arousal, and they're very responsive to what they're seeing around them. So our involvement at this is to keep them safe enough, because if they start to lose it, they will rely more on their limbic system. The more anxious and concerned a person will get, they will start to think to themselves, I don't know how to cope, which causes that alarm. The calmer you are, the calmer you can help them through it, the better they will be. So as we go through this period between 6 and 10, we can start to give them those jobs at home. We can start to make sure that they are actually learning to manage their friends. They will also, especially from, you may well have got some 8 and 9-year-olds that are beginning to enjoy reading together, I mean, on their own. They can find things that they're interested in, and that will also help them to put themselves into a position, into the lives of the people who they're perhaps reading, and try and again develop their skills. But any anxiety will cause alarm and for it to go down. So the aim for us, as I said, is to keep it going up nice and strong, because these are the list of skills that part of our brain is to learn about those managing. And this is quite simply talked upon as, this is what an emotionally intelligent person is. They're aware of their feelings, they're alert to their feelings, they can tell you how they are, they will tell you. And one of the things I must admit you need to get used to is when they say, I'm bored, and as if you suddenly have to become an entertainer for them or to do things for them. And this is an opportunity. Oh, well, I'm glad you've got that emotional response, as in, it's good you've ticked that one. I'm happy at the moment, and it's nice we shared. But you need to do something about your board just the same as I can do something about my happiness. They're alert to the feelings, but they need to, as we go on, to manage their feelings. It's for them to manage them, but it's us to hopefully teach them and help them learn how to cope them. They need to use those feelings well to achieve their goals. If they fall out with their siblings, well, that may well be that they're falling out, but has it achieved what they want, as in they want to play fairly together? Or are they going to manage those emotions to be able to do so? Have they thought about what they said or how they did or how that other person might have felt? Have they understood about the feelings of what you do has a repercussion or event onto somebody else? And then not only will they have that amongst their friends and their siblings and other members of their families, but also their interaction with others when they go to different places. How are they socializing and managing those skills? So if we look at those, and Goldman, who wrote some interesting books on emotional intelligence and emotional intelligent leadership and the emphasis of this, these are skills that were emphasized because adults needed to buy into it. But if we think, how well do adults manage these? And sometimes we think of our folks who we're dealing with, well, adults don't even do this, and they've got that fully developed brain. So when we deal with the children who aren't, we need to perhaps take a step back to think, what can I do to help coach and develop them? Because the more emotionally intelligent they are, the higher your EQ in this area is almost better than your IQ in the future that you're going to have. Because to get on with people is going to be the key for their future. Now, for 10 to 14, so if we've looked at that period between 6 to 10, if we've looked at them becoming more independent, starting that process of adolescence, starting to figure out themselves, starting to see what they like, understanding what's fair, what's not fair, discussing with themselves about how they interpret the world. They will now go into a period which is a massive change for them. The 10 to the 14 years is where their lives are quantifiably going to change. We know full well that they're going to be changing from this environment to this environment. They're going to be changing from this kind of school, which was open and fun and light, to go to somewhere else what is geared more towards that academic stuff. And they are going to be having new people, new friends, new challenges, just as it says there. But this is the aim for them to start mastering those social skills. This period between 10 and 14, they've learned, they've seen, they've experienced, they've got them chance to now come to, they are their own. They wanting to become more independent. And as I mentioned, that sense of belonging, autonomy is going to be important for them. If you're looking towards having a 10, 11-year-old, if you're looking towards thinking they're moving up in towards the secondary school, this is the time to discuss with them, write down what they think they can do on their own. What do they think is they are capable of doing? How responsible do they feel? And have a discussion about them. Think about how you can start opening up more opportunities for them to take charge of their lives. Think about how they can start learning to be introduced to managing their money and finances, about whether or not to buy presents for people and what to do, how that they experience those new things around them and how they're learning to cope. Because ever since that child, when they first of all fell over and they've looked to you to figure out what we're going to do, there's going to be other events in their lives where they physically, emotionally, mentally might fall over, and they're going to look to you. But just as you were there to pick them up verbally and help them so that they could find that resolve within them, this is now a chance for us to do so. The more independence they can be given through this period, the stronger they will become as adults. We fixed it while they were youngsters. Now's the time for them to start learning to fix and take responsibility for themselves. The other thing I'd like to actually mention here is, children, there's something called prospective memory, and I try and get this across to schools, because when you shifted from that smaller classroom into the bigger classroom, a lot more things come your way. You're meant to remember this book, that homework, the PE kit, you've got to do this, you've got to make sure you get the message home, and you've always got to be thinking ahead. That's what your prospective memory is. We've noticed when we've done studies in children that between the ages of 6 and 10, we've noticed a lovely development in that prospective memory. They start to organise and can plan ahead and get themselves ready because they remember what they're needing to do. But between the age of 10 and 14, we've seen no development. So it's almost as if the brain's got too many other things going on. We're trying to regulate everything else that's happening physically and emotionally to the body, that thinking ahead, I haven't got a chance. So try and now, don't just, you're 12 or you're 13, you still haven't remembered. Bear with them at this moment so that they can learn techniques too. Help them develop skills. And if there's any grandparents who are remembering this, you will remember certain things like tying a knot in your hanky years gone by. Well, we now have mobile phones that we can set. We might have other things, but it's to bear in mind that they're not the finished art. Memories is going to be key. The other point I'd like to mention is when you're talking to them now, try and match your language to what they're saying to help them understand things, but definitely also ask them, what do you think I've said? It's say in your words what I've said so that you can help them start to work things out. They're still very emotional, especially around the ages of 13, still very emotional. and they need to be scaffolding in the techniques of how they're learning to cope. But in understanding this, there's a wonderful book that Carl Pritchard wrote about the 4 stages of adolescence, and it's almost a rite of passage that youngsters need to go through. And if you've seen some of these things, you might tear your hair out thinking, how can this person who used to be so well is now doing this to us? And I like to think, have you ever watched a little mother bird or daddy bird giving their youngsters in the nest a worm? And it's nice because the kid just sits there. Well, I mean, the baby bird sits there with his mouth open, but give it a few weeks and that bird's going like this. The parents are having to battle. It's because the child and that bird is getting ready for fledging. This is that child beginning to say, this is my space, I'll do what I want to it. Their disorganization is they're testing the boundaries about doing things. Their forgetfulness might well be because to them it's not as important as it was. And what I would really enroll you to do is help them find ways to manage. Help them see that I understand what you're doing, but there are things that you're needing to do. What I often find is parents saying, I had to go in and tidy his room, couldn't find this, that and the other, he couldn't find it, got no idea. And that we're not training them at all, we're doing it for them, and which is not what we're wanting to do. The disorganisation, untidiness, forgetfulness, there's even a dip in their academic kind of ability at this period because there's so many other things going on. So we need to be patient with them, we need to be understanding with them, and we need to know that this is a stage they're going through and we can be assistant with them. We're giving them that belonging, we're giving them the autonomy, and we're helping them develop that social and emotional competence. They will also have that negative attitude. I'm bored with life. Don't talk to me. Everything's rubbish. No matter what you suggest, it's bad. I do not want to do it. It's boring. And no matter, even if you said we're going skydiving from 40,000 feet, it's boring. No matter what you suggest, it's boring. And the reason it's boring is because you suggested it. Because they're changing from, I don't want to listen to you. I listened to you when I was a littler. I'm no longer little, I'm a grown up. And you ask them, what do you want to do? I've no idea. I haven't figured that out yet. And they don't know what they want to do because they haven't worked it out. So their negative attitude and bored with life, what they need from you is to know they're valued, they can find an interest, you can help with them and help them discover what it is. And this is a lovely period where art might come into it, music might come into it, teamwork might come into it, friends might come into it, reading might come into it. No idea what it is, but what they try doesn't mean to say they've solved it. Be very careful about buying a pony too early and then 4 weeks later thinking, why did I buy that pony? They're not interested. You need to be aware that things might change, but they're exploring, and we work with them about how it could be exploring. And if they do make a commitment to, I would like to do this, then you need to discuss, well, how long are we going to try this for? And then we'll do it as long as that, and then we can review it again. So it's that kind of period. But rather than say, well, I'll give up, and don't do too much, because remember, they're trying to break away from you and find it themselves. The other thing that they might be is that active passive resistance. They will question you, they will challenge you, they will say it's not fair. But remember what I was saying about when it was at that time when they're 11 and 12, and you were saying, write down things that you think you can do alone. Help them be a part of what you want them to do in the future. And look at, it's not a battle between you, it's a battle they're having with themselves. It's not something that where they're resisting you. It's not it's suddenly the parents have been rejected. It's their rejection of their position that they're playing, and they need to find that autonomy. And the responsibility and the decision making they have at this period is going to be key for their natural development. And there will also become experimentation. You remember that slide I showed you earlier, where they want to try things, but we but we say, oh no, you shouldn't do that. And there obviously are things around us that we know are bad, but first off, if you start developing this social and emotional responsibility throughout their young lives, and you get to the stage of this, they will, I would sincerely hope, by now understand what's good or bad. And what they might experiment with is, I'll experiment by not doing my homework. It doesn't mean to say I'm going to experiment with drugs and jumping off of cliffs or whatever else. It might be small things that they're seeing what the consequences are because they're taking responsibility for their lives. And what you can do is help them test, not only obviously they're going to see what they can work, but see what's meaningful. Just talk about, will that get what you want out of it? What is it you're wanting from those relationships with those people? Is doing that getting you what you want? Is it effective enough for you to come out of this in a better position than if you'd have done it with them? What are you after? What is it that you're wanting to actually go through? Now, we can sometimes overprotect children, and obviously you need to know where those boundaries are and what those areas are. But we've got to also create an environment where, remember, going back to listening to them, respecting them, actually making sure that they can share with you. If you have an open conversation, you can talk about the kind of stuff that they would do. So our role again is about that autonomy, about the meaningfulness, and about that relationship of bringing together. So with all of this, with that period from 0 to 15, and again, I try and say to adults, you've got probably 14 years to get it right. Then you can see what you've created by the time you get to 15, because it gives you some indication of what's gone on up to that point. But becoming mentally secure, your aim for those children to become mentally secure, because we have no idea what the future is going to be in the likes of what's going on to us at the moment. But the idea of becoming mentally secure is to enable them to have sets of meaningful, coherent life experiences, and those qualities that will enable them to be able to look after themselves so they can stay mentally healthy. And those experiences, though ever small, will grow bigger. And as I mentioned to you, if I was doing leadership training, I would definitely say, what were you doing during your teenage years? Because that's the period that will usually give me a very good indication about how they're going to cope with stress, people, relationships, because of what they've experienced during this period in the secondary school. Those new opportunities, new challenges, new disappointments, how do they learn to cope? It's not ours to solve. And finding people to solve your problems for you just means you're tied to those people. You're meaning to create it so that they can find their own set of securities within them because of those wonderful, coherent experiences you've led them to. Which then brings us on to that skills for life, 15 plus. The neocortex is kicking in, that final part of the brain development, that final part that is going to carry on up until 25 as we're still maturing as an adult. We're beginning to start figuring out about the future. And sometimes we do get used to asking 15-year-olds, what do you want to do? What have you thought? And they look at you blankly. Some might do, but it's only just the beginning of them to see the bigger picture, to see what the opportunities are. Start talking to them and discuss with them about life issues, about the world issues. Get them to articulate what their interpretation of things is. Praise them for well thought through decisions and arguments. Enjoy the logical arguments they will have with you as they find out and discuss what they think is fair, but in a far bigger section than when they did when they were 7 and 8. They will have had a journey through the last 15 years with you. They will have looked at what you're doing as parents in their lives. They will have figured out they might want to change from you and move away from you and struggle and argue with you, which is all part of them flapping their wings ready to go off. They will also, at this period in time, perhaps look for alternative adults, the good school teachers that you've got, who they will listen to and respect to help add to the things that you've supplied them as parents and grandparents and carers. They will look to those to help them expand upon their own identity and the struggles and the difficulties that they might face in life, the uncertainties that they might face in life. Those aren't the things that will define them. It's how they cope with them that will define them. And those lessons will have been learned from the first time they'll have had a tussle with a child when they're playing together, as then when they experience it when 7 and 8 about saying who they like as their best friends, will be how they struggle with those difficulties of, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I want, I'm arguing with the people who I know love and care with me. And they go on to become the people who they look themselves in the mirror. And peer pressure at its height around the age of 14, because they're wanting to be with others, but they're not wanting to. They are learning those skills and mastering those social skills that are going to make them successful in the future. And we can build on that from the age of 15 onwards. And all I would put here is what skills for life would you want to give a person now? What skills do you think they're going to need that is going to enable them and equip them for the next 30, 40 years ahead? What skills do you think this is the best thing? And it has to do with empathy. It has to do with creativity. It has to do with about caring. It has to do with being thoughtful. It has to do with just being able to teamwork, to lead, to communicate, to listen. Those soft skills are what we're going to need, because they're going to be the ones that knit us together. Because at times like this that we're facing, what we need is the community around us to help us survive. And the skills that you want your 15-year-olds to know and to experience are ones that bond them together, not only to you, but the people they value and the folks and the experiences they value. So this has been just a quick introduction, as I say, from tots to teens. I hope that you've been able to get something from this whirlwind journey. You as a carer and in such an important role, demonstrate your social and emotional competence in everything you do. May your patience always be with you, and thank you for watching, and I do hope you've enjoyed it. My name is Victor Allen, and I'll look forward to any feedback or any questions or any comments. Much obliged. Okay, I'm handing back now to our wonderful head teacher. Hello.
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 Am I coming live now?
Yes, you are. You are.
Excellent. Victor, there is a question here that's come in from one of our listeners, which is, can empathy be taught or is it experienced?
I would say it needs to be experienced personally. I think we went through, there was something called social and emotional aspects of learning, SEAL, where we tried to teach these wonderful aspects within the classroom, and really they died a death, which is why they're no longer being used, because it isn't a lesson. I can tell you about empathy, but that doesn't mean to say that when you go out you're going to have to experience it. It has to be a living thing. It has to be something that you understand how it affects you, how it affects the other person, and what you're doing. So yeah, but the good thing about it is every time you go out of your door, there is an opportunity for you to experience something and learn from some empathetic aspect around you.
Thank you, Victor. I'm sure if any of you have any other questions, if you would, send them through, I'm sure we'll be able to get answers for you. But I'd like to just thank Victor now for his presentation this evening. I've heard Victor speak on a number of occasions before, and each time I've heard him speak, there's just a new nugget there. And certainly as our children are developing all the time and moving into the next stage of their emotional development, it's always great to hear how we might be able to support them to develop into the great human beings that we know they can become. So thank you very much, Victor. And thank you everyone for joining us. Good night.
Good night. Thanks again.